Thank you, everybody. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me to be part of this virtual seminar series. So far, this has been a great first couple of weeks for me at UCF. So I'm glad to be able to share my research on social agents for automated negotiation. So broadly speaking, my work involves social agents combining emotional models with artificial intelligence to solve practical problems. So I have pulled out a couple of key words there that are relevant. First of all, I'm interested in social agents. So that is, agents that are interacting with at least one other party. It could be an agent interacting with a human, could be an agent interacting with other agents in a human-like way. It could be a group of more than two people or two participants. Of course, I'm interested in emotional models as well, because that's a very valuable channel when you're dealing with social problems. And artificial intelligence is the mean by which we solve these problems, and the practical problems that I identify are ones where there is a specific domain like negotiation where there are specific goals in mind that we're trying to accomplish. So of course I say, I just reemphasize that emotion is a key modality for communication. They say a picture can tell 1,000 words. And certainly that's the case when we're designing these agents. It's not just text that you're wanting to interact with or certain, formal communication, but also embodiment is a key part of my work. So why are we interested in these kinds of social agents? Well, increasingly they're being used by humans. We have our virtual assistants, Siri, Cortana, etc., as well as customer service agents. If you've ever been on a phone tree where you try and navigate an automated menu, you'll realize they haven't advanced much in the last several years. But there are other places where these are really becoming more and more ubiquitous. I recommend you check out some of the tech demos from Google Assistant a couple of years ago. They've shown some really neat stuff where you have a virtual agent that's capable of calling up a real world hair salon and negotiating for the type of service that you would want to have and settling on a time by checking your calendar and doing a lot of stuff there, all in natural language and all pretty seamlessly. Now, that's a bit of a slick tech demo with some limitations, but it's just going to show how social agents are more and more integrated in our lives. So why negotiation? Well, I look specifically at human agent negotiation because it's a really excellent challenge problem for this kind of research. So what do I mean by that? Well, I see my work as being sort of the confluence or the crux of three broad fields, computer science, psychology, and business. And it's really about applying agents to empirical work, to user studies, to real world data. So on the computer science side, there's been lots of excellent work on developing negotiation agents. So agents that can reason about what they want and what their goals are. Unfortunately, a lot of this work historically has been about two agents negotiating with each other. So it's social, but in a very game theoretic traditional sense where you're trying to optimize or find a shared solution. Or if it's based on real world data that involves humans, it can be pure end-to-end learning, which has its own sort of black box problems. And fundamentally, there hasn't been an overarching architecture for this problem up until fairly recently. Now, on the psychology and business side, the good news is here that there's been excellent work for many, many years to decades on behavioral modeling of these social interactions and negotiation. So this is kind of the behavioral game theory. But this hasn't really necessarily involved artificial agents. It's been studying empirically how people interact, how they negotiate. And so it's not immediately obvious how you translate that into a computational agent. And when you're doing these studies, they have a tendency to either be not very interactive at all. You have a confederate that's following a script in your study, trying to look at some very specific behavioral effect, or they're highly interactive. They're in the wild, and they're more observational, but therefore you're not really able to control what's happening. So to me, this gap is a collaborative problem, or hopefully an opportunity. And when you're designing social agents, it involves all of these, different subfields, from examples of planning and user modeling to trust and reputation and personality. So to appropriately study this, we need to enable this community of research of people who understand all these different things, echoing some of Steve's points from earlier. And solving this problem requires, work on many sub-problems. And, I could pick several of these that I tend to focus on, and I'm certainly not an expert in all of them, which is why I, seek people who are interested in facets of this problem. Of course, my key research loop is fairly standard. On the one hand, I try and design these state-of-the-art social agents that are good at certain tasks, including negotiation, which has lots of interesting properties of sort of trying to figure out what other people want, and trying to be persuasive and try and worry about reputation and things like that. And then deploy these in certain practical places where you can then see how they work, develop a community of practice, have people contribute to then hopefully returning and improving those agents. To do this effectively, I would argue that you need a framework architecture to study how humans actually negotiate and how you can design agents that function in this. So how do we do that? Well, my solution in my work was to develop the IAGO agent platform. I did this 5 years ago and have been using it to essentially create a way for authors who are not necessarily experts in negotiation of these problems to rapidly develop agents that have these custom behaviors and then deploy them against real humans. So just for a very brief overview, the IAGO platform looks like this for the users. And this is an online sort of platform that has a lot of features that are relevant to HCI generally and negotiation. You've got a embodied agent avatar in the top left that can emote and show different expressions. You've got some ability to text language back and forth. And then because this is specifically for negotiation, you have a virtual offer table where you can exchange items. And this is set up to look at the multi-issue bargaining task in particular. So with that, we've had a lot of success in using this platform. There are lots of organizations and groups that are using this platform to develop agents, whether they're interested in the CS side, we want to build better agents, or more of the behavioral and social psych side, where we want to use these as study aids. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago at IAGO, we just completed the 11th Automated Negotiating Agents competition. We've been running IAGO in that for, I think, 4 years now, and had more participants this year than we've ever had. People are using it in their classes as sort of a capstone project to design these agents. So if you're interested in that, feel free to let me know. Of course, I see social agents as a problem being very relevant in a lot of future applications, but I'll just pull out 2 that I think are particularly relevant. First of all is looking at the idea of embodiment in agents. You were able to see on the IAGO platform that you have sort of a 2D avatar. The degree to which this embodiment is important and it has an effect is something that's been studied quite a bit actually at UCF. And where this can really matter is in a particular application, and that's healthcare. So we have a real dearth of manpower, frankly, in this country to deal with certain healthcare problems, whether that's mental health support, whether that's elder care, whether that's medical adherence. And there's been some great work in trying to see if we can get virtual social agents into these contexts. And whether they're on your computer or your phone, or they're a robot in your house, these are things where we have to really care about the embodiment of what's going to be effective. The second application is just broadly in games. Social agents have been certainly relevant in games, both for entertainment and in serious games for some time. And creating compelling characters, creating engaging characters that can display realistic human emotion has been looked at. Of course, putting really strong social intelligence in games is not a new concept. has been researched for some time, but it is ongoing. And even more than just intelligence, socialization in games, both of these examples had very, very robust, complex social interactions, one of them using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the other one using sort of a complex social interaction. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't actually even notice this in the games. But there's been a lot of work in developing these kind of complex simulations and looking at emergent behavior. So just to formalize sort of these implications, for those of you in computer science, these agents are increasingly capable of working in the social interaction space, and they can give you really fine-tuned control over many tasks, whether that's user modeling, decision processes, emotional communication, etc. And having a platform enables you to have a framework for community agent design so that you can collaborate with others. On the Psych Business side, using these kinds of agents can give you really, really fine-tuned experimental control and increased consistency, but they're still interactive. So you have a really good higher level of ecological validity. And hopefully you can use these to actually get empirical results about how people interact with agents, which may not be how they interact with other people. Finally, in entertainment and in games, emotional AI systems can be very powerful and compelling, but they're only as good as they are visible. And these social systems can be simulations and could lead to emergent behavior. And creating agents that are capable of this can lead to new things. So, of course, always interested in collaborating, reproducing my little word cloud here on the left. If you are interested in any of these subtopics, of course, feel free to reach out. This touches on a lot of funding sources. NSF's Future Work Program, we're going to be using these social agents more and more in the future. And I'll also call out the Air Force Office's Strategic Research's Trusted Influence area. Industrial partners, of course, I've mentioned entertainment several times, but there's also some great work going on in contract negotiation, supply chain management, and of course, emotion detection and emotional AI for behavior. So I will wrap up there. And thank you all for listening. And if you're interested, please feel free to reach out and I will answer as many questions as time allows.